For structural design, we are going to discuss a couple main focus areas. The purpose of the Federal Aid Bridge Program is to reduce deficient bridges. There's a list of eligible off-system and on-system structures on the LPA website that list whether a bridge is partially or fully eligible. If a project is partially funded, then it is only eligible for a rehabilitation instead of a replacement. Structural repairs must have at least a 25-year lifespan, no maintenance band-aids. Soft match credit balances are available upon request from your district contact. Soft match credit projects do not have to follow all federal rules. For example, Buy America and Work by a Local Force requirements are not required. For roadway design, we are going to discuss key focus areas. The first key area is traffic control. Traffic control is required for all projects from small trail projects to large roadway or bridge construction. For example, a new trail project would require construction fencing to keep someone from walking into a work zone. More complex projects may require public involvement to ensure the public and stakeholders know how traffic is going to be handled. For example, the I-64 interstate reconstruction in downtown St. Louis required significant coordination between municipalities and counties to ensure the public had adequate alternate routes during the shutdown of the interstate. Traffic control in general cannot be lump sum. Federal law requires a base set of traffic control plans with specific quantities for each major item. Projects with lane drops that have a defined number of channelizers and signs can be set up as lump sum, but any significant items like concrete barrier, changeable message signs, or arrow panels would need to have separate individual pay items. Projects with lump sum traffic control can create uncertainty and risk for bidders, which may result in higher bids. They can also lead to disagreements during construction. Now we are going to watch a short video on how to set up your traffic control plan.
During roadway design, transportation engineers use the MUTCD to identify the most appropriate traffic control system for the specific road type and the anticipated traffic volume. When actual traffic volumes grow beyond what was originally anticipated or collisions increase, generally existing traffic control devices need to be evaluated to improve safety. For example, the addition of a traffic signal to control the right-of-way at an intersection or pavement marking to provide turn lanes will decrease the severity of crashes. Therefore, agency staff should monitor changes in traffic volume and collisions and use the MUTCD to decide whether changes in traffic control are needed. Whether designing or reassessing a roadway, always use the standard most appropriate for road conditions. To illustrate how agencies use the MUTCD, let's follow a maintenance supervisor on a project to repair a storm sewer drain on a residential street. According to the work order, repairs will take place at a single location where the traffic is anticipated to be light, less than 50 cars per hour, and the speed limit is 25 miles per hour. The supervisor thinks his crew can finish the repairs within 4 hours. This project description leads to a typical MUTCD application, specifically lane closure on a minor street. The standard describes an advanced sign with an option for a work vehicle that has a truck-mounted attenuator. The MUTCD also describes conditions when flaggers might be required. Anticipating that drivers will be able to decide when it's safe to pass the work zone, the supervisor has the standard signage put in place. However, when he arrives at the work zone, the supervisor sees heavy traffic in the eastbound lane and a backup in the westbound lane. To pass the work zone, many drivers accelerate too quickly. In situations like this, when traffic does not self-regulate, the standard in the MUTCD requires the addition of flaggers, which the supervisor immediately arranges to manage the right-of-way. If your agency has jurisdiction over a road, it's responsible for applying MUTCD standards. And as our example illustrates, when traffic control does not appear to be working for the road user, your agency must reassess and allocate the appropriate traffic control devices. This assessment is made for permanent installations and temporary situations. For questions about applying the MUTCD, contact your State Department of Transportation. Additional training is also available through the local Technical Assistance Program.
Next, we will discuss drainage and erosion control requirements for your project. As discussed in the environmental section, all projects that have any excavation require a project-specific erosion control plan. The erosion control plan cannot be lump sum. If you have a rainy season, the erosion control plan may need to be changed to ensure water runoff is controlled properly, resulting in a change order. If the contractor is not reimbursed for the change, they will find other areas on the project to recoup their cost, resulting in increased construction administration. Pavements are one of the most expensive parts of your project. MoDOT has been successful in the use of alternate and optional pavement designs to get the concrete and asphalt industry to compete on paving projects. This has resulted in more bidders and lower costs due to both industries sharpening their pencils while competing head-to-head. If you are interested in using life cycle costs for alternate pavements on your project, please contact MoDOT for assistance. The next key area is non-motorized transportation, otherwise known as pedestrian and bicycle facilities. Non-motorized projects have to follow ADA requirements. We will now watch a couple of short videos on non-motorized transportation requirements.
Local public agencies, or LPAs, have a growing need and responsibility to the people in their communities to provide more options for the opportunity to safely walk or bike. Among the benefits of walking or bicycling, whether for utilitarian or recreational purposes, are improved environmental and personal health, reduced traffic congestion, enhanced quality of life, and others. The Federal Highway Administration, or FHWA, encourages all agencies to provide safe and convenient bicycle and pedestrian facilities. There is a great deal of flexibility in allowing you to use federal aid funds for constructing these facilities. Let's take a closer look at the bike and pedestrian-related federal requirements to make it easier for you to use these funds. You are required to design and construct any federal aid project in accordance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. The ADA and Section 504 standards apply to the design and construction details for sidewalks, crosswalks, curb ramps, and detectable warnings on any new or altered facilities. In some cases, you may be required to install and maintain audible traffic signals and audible signs at street crossings for the safety and benefit of the visually impaired. While the ADA and Section 504 establish accessible design and construction requirements for projects, additional design guidance exists that should be used for the development of other aspects of your projects. Two documents published by the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, or AASHTO, should be used for the design of bicycle or pedestrian facilities on federal aid projects, unless your state has an equivalent document or guide. The titles of these AASHTO documents are the AASHTO Guide for the Development of Bicycle Facilities and the AASHTO Guide for the Planning, Design, and Operation of Pedestrian Facilities. You must apply bicycle and pedestrian accommodation requirements that depend on the project type and scope of work during the planning, environment, and design phases of your project's development. For example, you must consider incorporating bicycle or pedestrian transportation facilities into all new construction or reconstruction projects. On all types of federal aid projects, you must consider how your project will affect existing bike and pedestrian routes. This helps you and your project avoid having a significant adverse safety impact on non-motorists. In most cases, you won't be permitted to sever an existing major route without a reasonable alternative route either existing or being provided. You may be required to install bike accommodations on federal aid bridge replacement or rehabilitation projects where bicycles are permitted to use the road at both ends of the bridge. While this requirement doesn't specifically mention pedestrians, agencies are encouraged to also incorporate sidewalks with the project, providing a safer path for pedestrians to use. During construction of a federal aid project, pedestrian access should not be reduced unless equivalent access exists. For example, let's say you have a reconstruction project work zone that closes an existing pedestrian facility. In this case, you have a responsibility to provide and maintain an alternative facility, and it must be accessible for people with disabilities. An exception can be made if you are temporarily closing a pedestrian facility during a maintenance project that is of short duration. You should contact your state DOT for assistance any time your project may temporarily close pedestrian facilities. Providing bike and pedestrian facilities will allow people of all ages and abilities to walk or ride more often to more places and be safer while doing so. As you plan, design, and construct your federal aid projects, consider how you can accommodate walking and bicycling to create a low-cost transportation choice for all citizens, regardless of age or ability. Your commitment to investing in bicycle and pedestrian facilities helps meet goals for cleaner, healthier air, less congested roadways, and safer, cost-efficient communities. If you have questions about bicycle or pedestrian requirements for federal aid projects, contact your state DOT for help.
Title II of the ADA applies to all public entities, including all state departments of transportation and local public agencies within the United States and its territories. Despite laws to provide accessible routes, pedestrians still face physical barriers to safe travel. Old roadways have not been improved, and even newer facilities may not include fully accessible routes. Accessibility laws and guidance require the installation of curb ramps or other modifications when a project alters a roadway. An alteration is a change that affects or could affect the usability of all or a part of a building or a facility. Alteration of roadways may include reconstruction, rehabilitation, and the widening of streets. The United States Court of Appeals ruled in Kinney v. Jerusalem in 1993 that roadway pavement resurfacing constituted an alteration and that the installation of curb ramps is within the scope of such a project. Resurfacing projects are not always simple asphalt overlays. Microsurfacing, in-place asphalt recycling, and cape seals are resurfacing treatments that trigger the ADA requirements for curb ramp accessibility. Maintenance activities to keep facilities in good repair do not require accessibility modifications. Examples of pavement maintenance treatments are chip seals, crack filling, and pavement patching. The United States Access Board provides standards and guidelines with the technical requirements for accessible pedestrian facilities. Curb ramp location, size, shape, and detectable warning surfaces are critical details. A curb ramp must be built in accordance with the standards to the maximum extent technically or physically feasible. Sometimes curb ramps cannot be fully compliant because of existing infrastructure, terrain characteristics, or environmentally sensitive areas. Agencies must document deviations from the standards, including the reasons why full compliance is not feasible. Another challenge is that constructing proper curb ramps may add time and increase the cost of a resurfacing project. Good planning can mitigate the additional time and resources required for ADA compliance.
In Missouri, MoDOT's ADA checklist is required on all non-motorized projects. The purpose of this checklist is to make sure the inspector and contractor know the ADA requirements. Sometimes the design doesn't work with the field conditions, so the contractor will need to adjust the design to ensure the final product meets ADA standards. It's usually too late at final inspection because the only option at that point is to tear it out. Standard deviations from ADA requirements must be approved by your district MoDOT contact.